Hello there, my RPG lovers, and welcome to another video. The Abased is an upcoming third-person action RPG which just got announced with a trailer. This seems to be the first action RPG of this kind with a biblical-inspired setting, which means that we can see elements similar to the story of David vs Goliath, the Plague, the Tower of Babel, Nephilims, and so on. I mean, it's not like we already didn't have a ton of RPGs and games in general that were inspired by the Bible in at least a couple of similar ways, but certainly not like this. Even though we have a lot of written info about the game, we only have like a minute of gameplay footage, so I won't have a lot of material to work with here in terms of the editing. So you'll get to see my stupid face quite a bit here. Lucky you. The story and the setting have the potential to be very interesting in this game, and it goes something like this. I'll give you a short version, by the way. The Abased is set in an ancient world that was once ruled by these huge giants, also known as mighty. These giants were once known for their strength, stature and longevity, but they were not monsters. They were the first rulers of this realm, shaped according to an order of creation. Their numbers were great, yet fewer than ordinary humans. These giants ruled the world for a long time, and at the peak of their power they got too prideful, which ended up being their demise. Mighty have built the great ziggurat, aiming for the heavens, then came the cataclysm and the plague, which was the beginning of the end for these giants. This event obviously took some inspiration from Tower of Babel. Humans have seized this opportunity and reclaimed the lands that were once taken by the mighty. They also killed a lot of them in the war, but the giants only started getting even stronger and impossible to kill. Humans then exiled them into the wasteland, and over the time these giants became more feral and stronger. Only a few giants remained close to humans, and they were used for the harshest labor. Humans then discovered their true source of power, which was their hair? What? I guess this has to be something similar to Samson's long hair from the Bible. Anyway, once you cut the hair of the giant, they become much more calmer and harmless. They used this knowledge to control the remaining giants for years, and they even created an order called the Abasers. Abasers were in charge of controlling the border of the city and deal with feral mighty that would come close to the gates. They would strike them from a distance and try to bring them down so they can cut off their hair. Which sounds like a glorified barber job, but anyway. Humans would eventually get too comfortable and postpone the hair-cutting event, and the number of Abasers started to dwindle, up to the point where they completely disappeared because the feral mighty were no longer a threat. After many years, giants' hair started growing like in the old times, and they came very close to the city once again. A mysterious insider somehow speaks to the giants in their old language, and he starts awakening their ancient memories. The protagonist of the game is called Elias, who is a hunter of heretics, basically. You will play as Elias, and you're the closest to what the Abasers were a long time ago. You're the only hope for stopping the giants. However, one of the Elias's hunts ended up terribly, after an innocent prophet has been captured and slain. Elias's body then gets struck by 3 different afflictions: leprosy, fading sight, and feral possession. We can see some glimpses of gameplay related to these elements in the reveal trailer. Before each major fight you'll have to clean yourself and keep these afflictions under control, otherwise you can turn into a feral beast, I guess. One of the key features is described as fate versus instincts. You can choose between devotion and feral strength. Speaking of gameplay features, here's everything we know so far. Slings and blades against giants, fight with an uncommon weapon. And yeah, I think slings are almost non-existing in RPGs, because I can't think of a single RPG which used this as one of the main weapons. The only example I can think of on top of my head is Monster Hunter World, but it was more of a gimmick than anything else. Useful, for sure, but not an actual weapon. The gameplay clips of combat with the sling look pretty interesting, and we can see some fun combat moves with this weapon. We have sword fighting as well, but we didn't get to see any gameplay clips with this weapon yet. Dynamic and responsive combat driven by player skill and character condition. So yeah, I'm hoping we get to see some actual melee fights in close range in the near future. The sling is described as a core tool in the battle, used for staggering enemies and creating openings. These giant fights are supposed to require good positioning and timing, which means the melee combat system has to be on point. They are probably not ready to show it yet, which is completely fine. The concept of this game reminds me of an obscure action hack and slash I covered a while ago. To be honest, I can't even remember the name, but I'll include it in the editing. The point of that game was to fight giants as well, but fights against giants became very repetitive very fast. Also, fighting giant monsters in RPGs has always been a cool concept, but rarely done properly. Unless we're talking about games such as Dragon's Dogma, Monster Hunter, and maybe the upcoming Crimson Desert. Anyway, the giants are far from being the only enemy in the game. This world presents threats beyond the mighty. You will face other enemies and undertake varied objectives that demand tracking, precision, and deliberate use of your abilities. Not every task leads directly to a giant, some require practical action, environmental awareness, or controlled intervention to move forward. Combat is responsive and weight-driven. Every strike, dodge, and impact carries consequence. Your effectiveness in battle is shaped by condition of your body and the state of your spirit. Neglect and imbalance will weaken you. The only enemy type we got to see in that revealed trailer are giants, so we'll have to wait and see for some other fights. Well, technically that's not true, we could also see humans fighting, but only in a short clip. Speaking of conditions, we'll have to manage them with cleansing and recovery. We can see how the character can cleanse himself and lower the effects of leprosy and go to a well that's supposed to clean him, I guess. But yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see how these effects actually impact your gameplay. I certainly hope the part about losing your vision is not an actual gameplay mechanic, because that has the potential to be very obnoxious. Maybe they'll have a fun idea for that as well, I don't know, but I rarely find the lack of vision in games fun. Spiritual balance is equally critical. Devotion grants discipline and clarity, while surrendering to feral instinct provides temporary aggression and resistance at a cost. Over-reliance on instinct disturbs balance and carries long-term consequences. So there you go, we got temporary aggression and resistance if we decide to be a dirty boy. We have no idea what are those long-term consequences, but if I had to assume, it's probably some negative status effects. Exploration takes you across diverse regions surrounding a vast desert, settlements, wilderness paths, ruins, and monumental ancient structures. Each area presents environmental threats, enemy variations, and distinct visual identity. We got to see a couple of different looking landscapes in that reveal trailer, and some of them look gorgeous. I think this game looks decent in general, even though we can clearly see it's not exactly a high budget game, but that was never an issue for me. You can find even more written info about this game on Steam page, but these were the most interesting parts for me. I'm definitely going to keep my eye on this game and cover it more in depth when we get more gameplay clips and more info in general, so stick around. If you want to support my channel more directly, you can always become a channel member or a Patreon. But the best possible way to support me was, and it always will remain, free, by subscribing and liking the video, of course. And if you want to go a step further, consider supporting your boy by becoming a YouTube channel member or a Patreon. Huge thanks to all my current supporters, and I'll see ya in the next one.